Hello and welcome to New Delhi for a special edition of the France 24 debate. I'm François Picard. India is on the move. We've seen growth sometimes in excess of 10% over the past decade. Last week, the Mumbai Stock Exchange broke a new record. Literacy is soaring, so is life expectancy. Now, for some, the change is coming not fast enough. Those who'd like to see freedom from the shackles of red tape and corruption, for instance. For others, it is perhaps going too fast, especially when they point to the widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. But a nation's identity, how it's doing, doesn't just boil down to how much you earn. Today in the France 24 debate, we're going to be looking at identity playing a big role in politics these days, and you can't help notice when you land here in Delhi that, well, there's an election campaign going on. We're going to be going today in the France 24 debate inside of the next superpower. And we're doing it with a man you might remember as the former number 2 to Kofi Annan at the United Nations. Today, he is a state minister, member of parliament, Shashi Tharoor, also the writer of several books, including your latest Pax Indica. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be with you, François.
You just to give our viewers a sense here, you spent a lot of years at the United Nations.
29 at the United Nations and 5 in Indian politics now.
And when you come back to India after 29 years, obviously you go back and forth, but was it the same place?
No, it's a very different place from the India I left. And at the same time, I've never thought that India was this timeless, unchanging land of cliché. I've always considered that change was bubbling always in our system, social change, economic change, political change. But because ours is a large and capacious democracy, a lot of these changes tend to be absorbed. And changes which in other societies might have generated revolutions become in ours just part of the ongoing evolution that people take in stride. So it really is quite interesting to see how much India has changed, certainly in fundamental respects. So visibly, the appearances of the places, the presence now of foreign goods and foreign brands, which were not there in the protected economy of my growing up in India, the number of opportunities available to young people as they leave their schools and colleges. There are professions available that didn't exist in my time. So there's change everywhere.
There's big change, and we're going to get back to that statement you made about it being a capricious democracy. I'll have to ask you a bit more on that.
Capricious is what I said, but it is capricious too, you're
okay.
right.
With us as well, we welcome Nirmala Sitharatham, who also spent some time abroad. You were a businesswoman, a journalist, and you've come back to India, and you're a spokesperson for the main opposition party, the BJP. And I guess the question everyone must ask you is, you're a Tamil. What are you doing in a Hindu nationalist party?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that kind of a description of my party. It is a nationalist party, BJP. And yes, I was abroad in different kind of assignments, but I was happy to come back and happy to get into politics, and my party has given me a good lot of recognition and space. And today, as a representative of my party, I'm glad to be with you all.
All right, well, we're glad to have you. We're glad as well to welcome Urvashi Butalia, whose best-selling study of the impact of partition between India and Pakistan drew a lot upon the personal experience of your family. The book is called The Other Side of Silence. Welcome to the show. And of course, you haven't left India. You've stayed all along. Yes. Do you think that there is this evolution that was just described by Shashi Tharoor, or do you think we've seen disruptions and...
Well, I think a bit of both. You know, Shashi and I are the same generation. I think he might be younger than me a little bit. But I also remember
Not by much, but we were at university at roughly the same time in Delhi.
But I also remember the time when we were growing up, when India was a very different place, where, you know, there was this sense of pride in the path of self-reliance that we had chosen to follow. And if you visited any other post-colonial powers, you saw the difference with India. You saw the sort of notion of independence that India was trying to strike. Of course, subsequently, so much has changed. And even though I have lived in India all my life, barring a small 2-year interval outside, I have seen the change in a much more sort of gradual way happening. And I think one of the areas in which the change has been very marked is in the position of women, where it has been both radically good and radically bad.
All right, we'll get back to that point because I want to ask you about that. One man who's not of the same generation of the rest of the panel is Rajul Garg. We can say it. You're 36 years old.
Oops.
And you
Glad to be here.
And you straight out of school, you have an IT startup, you start another company, then a third, and you today have your own business school, an online business school, Sunstone, and people offered you the chance to go work abroad, but you decided to stay put.
Yes, they did. I think when I graduated about 15 years back, I thought India is full of opportunities, and I'm glad to say that I think that's proven true for me. I think the change that I've seen is more through the eyes of young graduates. I meet a lot of young graduates over my last 15 years. I keep going back to my school. And I think I just see a different graduate than even when I graduated, which was not too long back ago, 15 years.
Right.
And I think it excites me, and it certainly, it seems very positive. So
All right, so there's a generation gap with
within
the one
15
before,
years,
and there's a generation gap with the one after.
I definitely think so.
So we've been asking people, and we went to the market yesterday here in Delhi, and we asked them, we said, what do you think? Is change happening too fast or too slow?
I would say it's changing at the right pace, not too fast, where we are not losing identity or losing touch with our roots, yet fast enough to keep in pace with what the rest of the world is doing.
If you go to the peripheral areas, they're horrible. The poverty, the standard of living, the facilities, zero. There's no medical facilities around. If you move like 100 kilometers from Delhi, so our country is actually static. It's not growing.
If we have a strong leadership who can take decision very fast, so definitely we can beat China as well as any other country of the world.
Time has stood still, that woman was saying in that report, in rural areas.
Well, not entirely true of all parts of India. There has been significant progress and change in rural India too. You just have to travel there to see it. But at the same time, we certainly haven't conquered all our problems, and there are many parts of India where villages are still not electrified, where the roads are still not in decent condition, where opportunities for jobs and decent work are not so readily available, and those are all challenges we need to overcome. The biggest and most visible change clearly is in the cities. That's where change has been dramatic, and entire new cities have sprung up. Gurgaon used to be a sleepy township when I was at university here in Delhi. I mean, no one would think of working in Delhi and living there, or living in Delhi and working there. But now it's become almost an extended suburb of the city, and it's become a gleaming, spanking 21st century city, which no one would have imagined of Gurgaon earlier. So you've seen changes like that. Indeed, villages have disappeared by becoming part of urban sprawl. So there is change, but yes, we still have serious problems we need to overcome, of poverty, of underdevelopment, but progress has been made of that, there's no doubt.
Is the change too slow or too fast?
Well, in some sectors, the changes are fast enough, and some others, we are stagnating. There's not even much of a change. I would honestly think we've lost about 50 years in terms of letting the effective entrepreneurship of India take its own role. The first 50 years of India, while ensuring self-sufficiency in some grounds, did stifle enterprise. And as a result, today you find that people once after 91, I'm not entirely supportive of everything that comes in the name of globalization, but still after that, there's a chance for the Indian entrepreneur to do his own. And in those sectors where they've been given that kind of a space to work, you see progress. But public governance and governance-related delivery mechanisms are all insufficient. And that is the reason why, as Mr. Tharoor says, you have a lot of issues which we have not tackled effectively as yet. And that is clearly because of administration and governance still not catching up with the times.
Urvashi Butalia, do you think Indians recognize themselves in all this change?
Well, I think yes, part of the time, but I think we are also very confused about who we are. in the midst of all this change, because in some ways the rapidity with which the change is happening and the ways in which the outside world has opened up to India, and just as villages are getting swallowed up into cities, so also the city is seeping into the village, and there's a lot of in-migration into cities from villages. So those old boundaries between the village and the city are dissolving in some ways or getting very blurred. So also India and its international connections are making for a lot of change. So I think in many ways we do recognize ourselves, but in many ways we're also very confused about who we are and where we are placed.
Okay, so confused, as we were saying at the top, there is an election campaign going on, I noticed. How do people identify politically then as a result of all of this? Is the conversation about this issue, or is the conversation about something else right now for you?
I think in the election campaign, certainly from the point of view of people, very often they identify in terms of identities as a particular caste group, as a particular localized group, or even as, say, a group of women. And they often vote on that basis, and the electioneering is also often on that basis. But say in a place like Delhi now, for example, where the election is imminent, you do have all parties addressing people as citizens of Delhi. It's not so much divided up on those questions of identity as it is on the issue of citizenship, which is a much broader issue than the specific identity.
Do you agree, Amala Sitaratham, that identity is perhaps less of an issue in the cities, more so in rural areas?
I think identity is an issue to an extent in all parties, in all regions, urban and rural. It would definitely have an impact on the way in which political parties choose their candidates, choose to have their representation in various different communities and regions. But after that, the issues are wider, larger, and rightly on issues which matter in everyday life. So to an extent, identity is critical because you need representation. But after that, it is a question of who's delivering best.
Shashi Tharoor, your thoughts on this?
It's a rare pleasure to agree with Nirmala. Yes, I think that Nirmala is right. One thing that I do see, however, is that there was a politics of pure and simple identity where appeals were made to voters only on the basis of identity. And that is giving way, and has in the last 20 years or so, very visibly given way to a politics of performance. That is where people are it's no longer enough to say, vote for me because we're the same caste, or isn't it time that people like us were in power? That kind of appeal was brazenly made not very long ago. Now people have to say, we'll give you roads, we'll give you electricity, we'll give you water, or we have given you these things, or the government has failed to give you these things. The issues of performance are now much, much more center stage. And I think that's what Urvashi also meant when she spoke about citizenship. When we're talking about an election in a state like Delhi, which is overwhelmingly urban, the issues of governance, of performance, of the kinds of things that citizens are concerned about, irrespective of caste identity, become far more important. In a larger state, say a state like Chhattisgarh right now, where there's also an election that's already, the first balloting has already taken place, you do find other aspects coming in, perhaps more fundamental issues of development, of left-wing violence, of the rights of the tribal people, of caste issues and so on, in a bigger scale than you've seen in the Delhi election. So India is a very vast country, very difficult to generalize across the board, and right now we have 5 states going to the polls, and each of them has a different political reality. But with one thing in common, that in 4 of them, the BJP and the Congress are the principal rivals. And that's what's perhaps given it the trappings of the kind of media attention that you've all been talking about and noticing.
Rajul Garg, your father was not an entrepreneur. He was a civil servant. He was, you were telling me, a labor inspector at factories.
In the UP government, yes.
The people of his generation, do they think a different way when they go to the polls than the people of your generation?
I think they think very differently. So I think in the cities, the change is too fast. And I think in the tier 2 cities, the change is too slow. So I think when I look at Delhi and when I look at my friends and people, it's very hard to relate to your own parents in a lot of different ways, in terms of sensibility, in terms of culture, in terms of aspirations.
Is there friction sometimes?
I think Indian family system is really close-knit, and hence I think there is the friction. Even if it's there, it doesn't surface up. It's sort of people
You don't hang
live
your
with
laundry
it.
out in public for sure.
You live with it, but I think certainly in terms of ideology, in terms of principles, I think, like I said, sense of entitlement, the pace at which people want things to move, there's a big difference, I think, in terms of, my father's generation and mine, I would say. And I would say even mine and, 15 years hence, people who are graduating today from college. So I think change is very rapid. But I think when I go back to, some of the city that I grew up in UP, there used to be 13-hour power cuts when I was growing up. Now it's 8 hours.
So it's a big.
So it's progress, but it's not.
It's still
enough.
8 hours.
It's still 8 hours. I would have predicted 15 years back that it would have gone fixed in 15 years.
Okay, so the identity politics that we talk about, and in India, by the way, it's religion, it's ethnic, it's caste, it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
But you're saying that there's another aspect to it, and you mentioned it at the outset, which is gender. And the whole world watched this horrible case of this 20-year-old student from Delhi who was gang raped and murdered. Is that a turning point, that incident?
That particular incident? In some ways, yes, it was a turning point for a variety of reasons. In the sense that, one, it drew out huge protests on the issue of gender, and protests in which there were not only women. Because, as you know, India is no stranger to protests, and the women's movement has been protesting for years, making different demands of the state and expressing their anger over certain things. But this particular protest, because of...
And did it resonate beyond just
yes.
the urban elites?
Yes, it did resonate beyond just the urban elite. It wasn't only in Delhi, it was in many other places. And partly that also has to do with the media and the way in which the media reaches out. And I think the other interesting thing about this was the international attention it drew to India, which was in some ways good and some ways bad, but it also sort of called the bluff of the Indian Shining India story, because how can you have a Shining India story if half your population is subjected to the worst kind of violence? And therefore it forced our government into action in some ways much more rapidly than they would have done. And it opened up the issue which has not yet disappeared off the public agenda. So in all of those senses, I think it was a significant moment in the history of the struggle for women's rights in this country, which is still an incomplete history and which has some very fantastic stories attached to it, but some really terrible ones as well.
All right, we're going to pick up on that when we come back. Stay with us, much more to come. We're in Delhi. This is a special edition of the France 24 debate.